Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Friday, the 18th of May, 2012. I'm Jim Ninsel, host of Political Roundtable, our weekly analysis and commentary on local, state, and national politics. Tonight on the Roundtable, we'll take a look at the debate between Republican Jesse Kelly and Democrat Ron Barber in the special election to complete Gabby Gifford's term. We'll also examine how local governments are looking for ways to fix our roads and discuss whether the Arizona Democratic Party is being unfair to candidates who want to challenge Congressman Raul Grijalva. Joining me this evening is Democratic Party Chairman Jeff Rogers and Pima County Republican Party Chairwoman Carolyn Cox. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Carolyn, let's start with you this evening. Early voting has now started in this special election between Republican Jesse Kelly and Democrat Ron Barber to replace Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. We had a debate here in Arizona Public Media on Wednesday of this week. How did you think that went?
Well, I thought Jesse did a good job, except that he didn't get to talk very much. But when he did get an opportunity, I thought he did great.
Jeff, what was your takeaway?
Well, I think this is going to turn into a race about character and competence. And I think my read on that debate was when you looked at them, you saw a man of extraordinary character in Ron Barber, who's highly competent to do the job. He knows his facts. He knows the issues. He knows this district. And so we're very confident that he's going to do well. And you could see that in that debate. I think Mr. Kelly had an awful lot of trouble explaining his flip-flops. I mean, he really wants to do an etch-a-sketch moment here and erase all of the things he's done and said prior to this year, and I don't think he's going to be able to do that. I mean, he's being confronted, as he was during that debate, with his own words, his own slogans, and the things that he's promised to do.
Carolyn, you want to respond
Well,
to that?
the only problem is that the things he's being confronted with are the words taken out of context. And so we're going to talk about that today as we go along, and I'll fill in the context of the things that he said. But you know, right there, I know there's no question that they were his words. But you have to understand that they went along with another sentence and a method of thinking that I think is very, very good.
All right, well, let's hold off on that because we are going to take a look at one of the ads there, and I want to take a look actually at a moment from the debate first where Mr. Kelly and Mr. Barber really clashed.
Let me just say one more thing about the energy policy issue. You know, a lot of things have been said in Mr. Kelly's campaign on his website that are just flat out wrong. You know, one of them is that he believes that oil is a renewable resource. I don't think so. I believe that's incorrect. And I just think we need to have the ability in our candidates to tell the truth and not to make stuff up.
Well, sadly, that's not nearly the first lie that Ron Barber's told on this campaign. I am hoping that that'll be the last. Said that it was a joke. Everybody knew it was a joke. So once again, here in a public forum, a man of your stature just lied to every voter of Southern Arizona.
Just let me interrupt for a second.
How embarrassing.
Let me interrupt
I
for a
have
second.
not interrupted you
No,
once, nor will you interrupt me once, sir. So please,
I will
let's not do that.
Go ahead and finish, and then I want to talk about
I would
what you just
appreciate
said.
that. I would appreciate
Go ahead, finish.
that. Thank you. I'm done.
Finished? Okay,
Please
good.
continue.
I guess I didn't interrupt you. Here's the thing. You said not too long ago that you wanted to eliminate the minimum wage, right? You said it. It's on tape. Are you denying that?
I'm allowing you to finish.
No, did
Please
you say
continue.
that?
Is it my turn to talk?
No, I'm just asking you a question. Yes or no?
You're not the moderator.
Okay,
in this debate,
but I'm just
Mr.
asking you.
Barber.
Let me go on. You said it, and then I went on a local radio talk show, and I repeated what you had said, which is actually on tape. You came on later on that show and said I was a liar. Well, the facts are that I wasn't a liar, and you were trying to misinform people. So I just think you need to get your facts straight. You need to not be attacking me inappropriately. You need to not make things up, as you've been doing from the very beginning. You need to tell the truth, and then we'll have a more civil campaign. That's the real issue here. Is making stuff up is not what this campaign is about, and you've done a lot of it.
That's right. What this campaign is about is a clear contrast. I'm a United States Marine Corps combat veteran, born in this nation. I'm a husband and father of two, and I am a small businessman.
Carolyn, that was a moment that I think a lot of people were talking about. It came towards the end of the debate, but afterwards, that was the moment most people were talking about in the debate.
Right. Okay. The people who love the minimum wage the most are the unions, because most of their contracts are tied to when the minimum wage gets raised, then they get to raise their wages. And so what happens is that the cost of everything else goes up. And if you look at the statistics that the African Americans or any other group that has a lot of unskilled labor in it, their unemployment rate goes up every time the minimum wage goes up. And that makes sense because you have businesses who are trying to hire people who don't have skills, and if they can afford to hire them on for a time that they can train them in the job, then that works out. If the minimum wage gets too high, then they don't hire the unskilled labor. And so actually it would be best if you would just let the market allocate what the wages should be based on the available jobs.
And eliminate the minimum wage.
Basically.
Jeff.
Well, the problem here is that you can't get Jesse Kelly. I mean, he's extraordinary in the way he's so confident in his ignorance. I mean, this is a guy who still is out there telling us he's going to create tens of thousands of jobs in the energy industry and that we have more oil than Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is a guy that is not competent to be a United States congressman. But in addition to that, this says a lot about his character when he won't even admit that he said he wanted to eliminate the minimum wage. Now, I've heard the arguments that Carolyn's made before about why the minimum wage should be eliminated, but what we have in Jesse Kelly is a man who doesn't want to admit he even said the words, just like he doesn't want to admit that he said the words about Social Security and Medicare: reform it, privatize it, phase it out. Now, I don't know how you can take that out of context, reform it, privatize it, phase it out. I mean, he said it, and now he wants to pretend that he didn't say it at all. Now, if he were an honest man, which I contend he's not, he would say, well, I've changed my mind about that. I've matured as a candidate. I've learned that this is not a direction we should be going in. But instead, what he wants to do is hide behind a rock and say, I never said those things. And that just gives us the idea that this is not someone we can trust to go to Congress and represent Southern Arizona.
And Carolyn, in my first interview with Jesse, he did say that he'd like to get rid of these programs, Medicare and Social Security, although he did make a point of saying we needed to continue to give the benefits to the people currently receiving them, right, but he would like to phase them out over time.
Okay, you want me to talk about that now?
Sure.
Okay, and I also want to say on energy, it has been confirmed. I've seen articles in the Wall Street Journal and other publications where we actually do have a lot of resources that are available to us. Now, it's not just like digging a well, say in Saudi Arabia. You do have to do the fracking and that kind of thing, but the energy is there. Let's talk about Social Security. What kind of a program do the federal workers have? They have their Federal Thrift Savings Program, which is a privatized retirement account. It's invested in the private sector. You and I, as taxpayers, match what the federal employee puts into the federal savings, thrift savings plan, and then they love it. And what Jesse is talking about is being able, number one, you have to be sure that you honor the benefits to people who are over 55. And all of us have always said that, who are trying to reform Social Security. You honor the benefits to the people who are over 55, and you give younger people a choice. You don't force them to get off of the traditional Social Security. They can stay on it if they want it. But I think you would find that most young people understand that the rate of return from Social Security is essentially about 1.5%. And overall, the return from the private sector has been much higher than that.
And let me just clarify there. The federal workers do have that retirement option, but they also are required to pay Social Security taxes and are eligible for Social Security.
They are now. I forget, Mr. Colby, Congressman Colby told me when that happened. I think it was 81 when they started doing that. They haven't always, but they are now. They are now covered by Social Security. But the point is that they have the option of taking part of their income and investing it in the private sector, and you and I match it.
Right, so, and then individuals generally do that with 401ks or with IRAs. They can do the same thing,
can do that
depending
kind of
on their employment status or their decision to do it privately.
Right, but what Jesse is saying is let the people have the choice if they want to do that. And with the idea, I mean, if you remember in 1981, it was possible for municipalities to opt out of Social Security. Galveston, Texas did that, and some others did that too. And the rate of return on their money means that they get benefits about twice what Social Security could pay them. So if you're thinking in terms of what is best for the general population, actually, you get a much better return on your money by investing, and you use index funds. You don't just, invest in anything like pork bellies and gold futures and all that kind of thing. You do have some restrictions, and they can be either more in equities, more in bonds, or more in treasuries, depending on how you approach retirement. So,
but one of the things that Jesse has done on his own website is to take out any reference to privatization. He says he does not actually support phasing it out, and it sounds like what you're describing is phasing out Social Security.
Well, what I'm describing is that to give people choice, and I think he still does say that the young people would have a choice. He calls it a personal retirement account.
Well, he actually took that language off his website and changed it to this other language that says, I do not support in any way privatizing or phasing out.
Okay. I think that is what I think that's what has to happen eventually. Either that, or else you have to have such a booming economy that you can use the money in the general fund to make up the difference. Because you and I both know that the demographics don't work for a pay-as-you-go system anymore. There are not enough young workers relative to the number of retirees. Payroll taxes don't cover it. They don't cover Social Security. They don't cover Medicare.
Okay, Jeff.
Well, first off, the so-called crisis in Social Security has been overstated by the Republicans, and there's a simple, quick fix. You either eliminate or at least raise the level on which the wages are subject to Social Security taxes. That fixes it completely, problem gone. And Social Security is not an investment. Social Security is an intergenerational promise. I pay Social Security benefits so that my mother and father can live better in retirement, and I'm sure that Carolyn's children, they do the same thing. And someday it will be my turn to have Social Security, and we hope that there will be a generation of people that will be still willing to support their elders in this country. So this is a promise made between people. And if you remember, before Social Security, well over half of people, of our seniors, lived in poverty. Since the advent of Social Security, it's far less than 10% of the population that's now living in poverty. So this is, I've heard the arguments that Carolyn makes, and at least she honestly makes the arguments. I disagree with them and think it's a wrong way to go. But Jesse Kelly won't even make those arguments anymore because he's running from something that he knows is highly unpopular, and particularly in a moderate district like this.
Well, that point is, I think, what the Democrats are trying to say with this advertisement that's now running, that's been sponsored by something called the House Majority PAC, which is a super PAC supporting Democrats. Let's take a look at that.
Do you identify yourself more as a Republican or with the Tea Party?
Well, I would say the Tea Party.
Who is Jesse Kelly? And what does he stand for? Jesse Kelly wants to lower taxes for the richest 1%. And for corporations,
the corporate tax rate should be zero.
Kelly's view of the minimum wage.
We must take steps to lower and eventually eliminate the minimum wage.
And what does Jesse Kelly really think about Social Security and Medicare?
Social Security and Medicare, it's the biggest Ponzi scheme in history. Right now, you have to take steps to reform it, to privatize it, to phase it out.
That's right. Jesse Kelly said he'd love to eliminate Social Security. Jesse Kelly. Too many dangerous ideas. Too extreme for us. The House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
All right, so Carolyn, that is the ad. The Democrats are running, and the clear message there is that Jesse Kelly is an extremist. He's out of touch with the mainstream, which is the message they've been pushing throughout this campaign. And you're saying a lot of those things are taken out of context, and we talked about some of them earlier.
Right. And you know, the thing that I want to go back to Social Security for a moment and what Jeff was talking about. Yes, in the beginning, it was supposed to be a supplemental program. And you know, FDR said it would never cost more than 1% that the individual would put in and 1% that the employer would match. And as I say, the demographics have changed where we no longer have 16 workers paying for each retiree. We have now about between 2.5 and 3. So it has become so expensive when you get 10% of your wages. I mean, if you invested 10% of your wages in a private equity type program, like an index fund, that kind of thing, you would have plenty of money to live on when you're retired. So it's an unfair return on young people today. In other words, it needs to be modernized. It needs to be brought into the kind of investments that are available today. Because I will grant you, in the 1930s, there were not other options. And there were people, actually, I mean, I know why it started, and it made sense when it started. It's just the politicians would never change it to reflect the current conditions.
Okay. Jeff, we kind of touched on this already.
Yeah, I like this ad because what it does is it uses his own words against him. He was running in 2010 when the Tea Party was the be-all and end-all for Republicans, and you know that was just a short span of time where that was a little different period. And now those words that he was using in 2010s are coming back to haunt him. And so he's running as hard as he can and hiding and trying to say, well, I didn't mean that, except he won't say that. But I didn't say it seems to be what his main thrust of his argument here is. He is too extreme for Arizona. Do you think, how many people in this state do you think want to eliminate the minimum wage? We voted to raise the minimum wage in Arizona over what the federal minimum wage is by an extraordinary percentage.
But that doesn't make it right.
The voters think it's right. And what about eliminating the Department of Education? What about eliminating the EPA? If you put these things to a vote, even in Arizona, a fairly conservative state, they're not going to vote to do the kind of outlandish things that this man has recommended and promised to do. And so when we look at that, he is too extreme. But even worse than that, he's not honest. He doesn't have the character to go to Congress because he won't stand up, as Carolyn's saying, and stand up for these beliefs. If he were here standing up for them, then we could debate whether or not he's right or wrong. But now we've got to say he won't even admit he has these beliefs.
All right, well, let's hold off right there because we've got another ad I want to look at, and that's the ad that the Citizens United, another super PAC, has come into Tucson and is running this ad, which actually looks at one of the themes of the Republican campaign, which involves future cuts to Medicare. And let's take a look at that one.
In order to pass Obamacare, $500 billion was taken from Medicare. Jesse Kelly will vote to repeal Obamacare and restore funding to Medicare. Obamacare will gut the Medicare Advantage program. Jesse Kelly will save Medicare Advantage. Obamacare hikes taxes, kills jobs, increases the deficit. Ron Barber won't vote to repeal Obamacare, but Jesse Kelly will. Jesse Kelly for Congress. Citizens United Political Victory Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
All right, Jeff, what did you think of that one?
Well, it's completely dishonest. I mean, this is the ad that's been that has been running around the country in other districts. It's completely dishonest. Nothing has been cut from Medicare. And the so-called cuts that they're calling cuts are the same things that the Ryan plan, which Jesse Kelly has previously endorsed. That Republican plan, they assume the same cost savings of $500 billion over the future 10 years of this cycle. So nothing has been cut. There's nothing to restore. And so the ad is completely dishonest. And you got to remember who put this ad out, Citizens United. These are the people who are responsible for the ads we're seeing and the unlimited cash and the ability to hide your name and who contributed to it. One of the people who's involved in Citizens United was also the person who was responsible for the Willie Horton ad. So I mean, you look at who's running these ads and the fact that they're extremely dishonest, and ask yourselves, should we listen to them? Should we even have them on TV?
The MIT economist who first told people like Gabby Giffords that if she signed Obamacare, it would cut the deficit by $100 billion. That very same man is today saying, oops, I made a mistake, and it's really going to be a shortfall of about $234 billion. We know that Obamacare is using the interest on the student loans. They're shifting that over to pay for Obamacare. They put a 2.3% excise tax on medical devices. You just cannot institute 159 new agencies and expect that you're going to do that without a problem. And remember this, I say Obamacare is a bad deal, and if it weren't, why did the congressmen exempt themselves? They're not going to be covered under Obamacare.
Let me ask you about the cuts that we're talking about here, because they're saying, $500 billion in future spending. Right. Just as you're saying, Medicare can't, or Social Security can't continue under its current path. Do you think that the Medicare future reductions, was it inappropriate for the Democrats to say we're going to cut and reduce spending on Medicare over the $500 billion?
Yeah.
You think that was the wrong way to go?
But you see, the problem is who they're doing is that who they're cutting are payments to the doctors. We have to completely redo this to where there is a market type system. I mean, it's just like with LASIK surgery. It has gotten better and better every year, and it costs less money than it did before. And that's because it's a competitive system. Anytime the government sets price controls, you and I were talking a minute ago about what President Nixon did, and he was trying to set all these price controls, and we had gas. We stood in lines blocks long trying to buy gasoline. The federal government, every time they try to set price controls, they create more problems than they solve.
Okay, but in terms of reducing future expenses in Medicare, do you think it was inappropriate to do that? The $500 billion
they already can't pay the doctors enough to get them to stay. And so what Jesse Kelly is saying, if we have a huge energy industry where we create a lot of jobs and create revenue. I mean, you think about North Dakota, they have so much money they don't even know what to do with it. That is a way that we can at least continue to pay Medicare for the current retirees until some better market-based system can be designed. But you can't just continue doing because it's already spending more than it takes in from payroll taxes, and the payroll taxes don't even have a limit. I mean, you pay the Medicare tax on all of the wages you make, no matter how much they are, and it still isn't enough.
All right, Jeff, very quick response here because we're running out of time.
The market has failed in the healthcare industry. The market has completely failed in America. We've had a free market in this for years, and we have the most costly health insurance in all of the world, by far, and yet we're not even in the top 15 in either of the two indices of quality, which are infant mortality and longevity. And the fact is the market has failed, and we need to do something to change the way health care is delivered in this country. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is a first step. Is it the be-all and end-all? Probably not. Can it be improved? Yes. But it's a long step forward from where we've been.
I have to challenge that, because what he's saying is not true. We are not 35th in the world if you consider the fact that we consider every live birth to be a birth. And you know how hard the doctors and nurses here work with preemies. Most societies don't even consider the child to have been born until it's about 6 months old. So obviously our death rate from infant mortality is higher because we are counting them from the time that they're born.
That's just not true.
Yes, it is true. Jane Orient will confirm that is true.
We're getting off track here, and actually we're running out of time really quickly. So I want to get to some of the dust settling at the Arizona legislature. Governor Brewer signed a law this week that moves the time for elections to a situation where they all have to be held on the same year in the presidential and gubernatorial years. Jeff, what did you think of that?
Well, it's a bad idea, and it may well be unconstitutional. We just heard when they struck down Peyton's law that charter cities have a right to set policies like elections for themselves. And it has to be something that is a purely statewide concern for them to come down on cities and say you have to have your elections in a certain time frame. And so I believe it could well be overturned, but the fact is it's bad policy. You'll have city elections at the bottom of a 20-page ballot. And it might be good for Democrats because we'll have higher turnouts in those years, but you won't have people coming out who are focused only on the city elections. And people who are well informed about the city elections and are choosing to vote on the city issues as they are. So I think it's a bad idea.
Carolyn?
Well, the turnout in these off-year elections is always much lower than it is during the what you've called on-year elections. And so I think that you would get greater turnout. You would also save some expense for the state because you wouldn't have to have as many elections.
Well, the cities were unanimously against this. Virtually every city in the state and the League of Cities and Towns lobbied the governor to veto this bill, lobbied against the bill. So none of the cities agree with what the Republicans did here.
Okay, and we are unfortunately really running out of time here, and I'm very sorry that we are doing that. But Secretary of State Ken Bennett this week, Jeff, said that he's concerned that he may not be able to put President Obama on the ballot unless he gets proof of a birth certificate that he was actually born in the United States from Hawaii. Well,
I think this is his opening volley in the 2014 gubernatorial race. He wants to secure his base that's made up of the sort of Tea Party birther types so he can win the primary. At the very same time, we had Tom Horn again trying to attack Mexican-American studies in his constant war on minorities. So both of those guys are picking a horse they think they can ride through a Republican primary.
And Carolyn, what do you think of...
Just remember, the Tea Party, I think, was not bad because we stood for lower regulations, lower taxes, smaller government. I mean, the government now is doing things that it has no business in doing that should be done by the private sector. So I can't say that the Tea Party was a bad thing. I think it woke people up.
And do you have doubts about whether President Obama was actually born in the United States?
I do not.
Okay. Okay, and very quickly, Congressman Grijalva, his opponents are saying that the Democratic Party is not providing him with lists, and we only have about 20 seconds for you.
Well, we're a little suspicious. People have come to us and said they're suspicious of what these people's ulterior motives are in getting their hands on what has been something that took us a lot of time, effort, and money to establish, and that is a huge database of voters, independents, Republicans, and Democrats. And so we're not going to turn that over willy-nilly to people that we think might have an ulterior motive.
All right, we're going to have to hold it there, and I'm really apologize. That's all we do have time for tonight. Keep up with the latest political news, though, by visiting azpm.org/yourvote. And while you're on the website, we'd love to hear your thoughts about tonight's program, so be sure to leave us a comment. To find out the latest from AZPM, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned next for the News Hour, and then at 8:30, you can tune into Arizona Week for an in-depth look at the dangers of fire season. On Monday, Arizona Illustrated is going to introduce us to a U of A grad student who has won a trip into space. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.